here for you today. Talent matters, a business and employee perspective. And without further ado, I leave it to them.
Well, thank you, Michael. My name is BWBacon. I'm in Denver. I have been in the talent space for about 20 years. I own a technology staffing and services company, and I have the pleasure of helping companies grow with people. I'm joined here by an awesome group of panelists, Samantha, Vicky, and Lindsay, and you're going to get to know them really well in just a moment. The topic of our panel is Talent Matters, a business and employee perspective during COVID. So what does that mean? What can you expect? What kind of takeaways might you have today? What I've encouraged our panelists here is to make this as exciting and rewarding for them, because that way it'll be rewarding for you. All of this experience, the experience that we're all having is new to everyone here. As experienced as our group is, we are all making decisions here in unprecedented times. And in that, we're all learning things along the way. And so I hope that as you experience how it is we're learning, that you can learn something as well. It's certainly incumbent that for all of us, we find ways to adapt, improvise, and overcome like we never have before. Where arguably, if we look back at our lives a month or so ago, perhaps they were too good to be true, and things right now, and for many people facing a lot of adversity, things are too true to be good. And so how can we help you to navigate these uncharted waters? If you're a business trying to make key decisions around your talent, or if you are a candidate who has just hit the market because you've been laid off, how can this group help you to navigate these waters? I hope those are some of the questions and more that we can help you answer. So, Samantha, will you tell us quickly about yourself? And then for each of you, I would like to encourage you to share something that's particularly impactful that you've observed or learned over this past 5 weeks.
Sure.
Samantha, will you start?
Hi, everybody. I'm Samantha Strube. I'm the Director of People Success at LogicGate, located in Chicago, Illinois. We're a SaaS platform that operationalizes the governance, risk, and compliance space. We are about 120 employees, pretty much all based in Chicago, but also we have some remote employees as well. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic with my fellow panelists and learn from all of you as well. As Dave mentioned, this is a new era, a new time for all of us, and we're all really learning to, we're all here to grow and learn. I think the thing that I'm leaving the last month with and moving in the future with is just the power of the human condition and our spirit to collaborate and support one another. I've seen it in so many different ways within my own organization and my community. And I think that there's a lot of great power for us to harness out of all of this and come out the other side even stronger.
Super. Thank you, Samantha. Vicky, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've observed and experienced thus far.
Yes. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Vikki Caruso. I'm a SVP of People at Clearcover. Clearcover is an auto insurance company that brings you smarter insurance by using technology and a mobile app. So if you have issues, if you have an unfortunate situation where you have an accident, you can process it right on your phone. And it also allows us to offer much more reasonable rates to people. And I know people are looking to save money now. So don't hesitate to check it out. We have about 145 employees right now. I think when I think about what I've learned through all of this, I think it's two things. One is our employees are resilient and they're so passionate and empathetic with each other. It's kind of, I could get emotional. They're ahead of people, how much they care about each other and how much they pivoted and just jumped right in and turned it on and got productive right away. And then I think the other thing is that Chicago, and Lindsay will talk about this more, I'm sure, but like Chicago is such a tight-knit community. When one organization is impacted, we all connect, especially on the head of people. We're always trying to help one another out and be there for each other. And so never underestimate the power of a connection.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vicky. And Lindsay, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Knight. I'm with Chicago Ventures here in Chicago. We are a venture capital firm that invests in seed stage tech startups. So generally pretty early stage. We like to invest mostly in areas outside of the coast. So a lot of our companies are here in Chicago. Clearcover is not one of our portfolio companies, but I know Vicky well. She's worked at a handful of the startups that we've invested in. LogicGate is one of our portfolio companies. That's how I know Samantha. We have maybe 55 or so active companies right now. I'm glad that I have heard that lots of folks from both Denver and Austin are attending the webinar today. We actually have a fairly big presence in Austin and have made one investment in Denver and a company called Havenly, if any of you know it. So continuing to spend more time in these markets and kind of underserved tech ecosystems throughout the country. My role specifically, and a reason for being here today, is I spend a lot of my time really doing what we consider post-investment work, so working operationally with our portfolio companies. And a lot of that, as you can imagine, at the early stage is helping with talent and building out, people organization and working with people like Samantha and Vicky. And Dave, it's funny because we didn't talk about our answer to this question ahead of time, but I think we're all kind of saying the same thing is what I've been thinking a lot about is just the power of community, where, I've known Vicky for many years. I just got to know Samantha, but I feel like we've done a lot of really great work together over the last couple months as we've been getting to know each other, and you've been doing awesome work at LogicGate, and I've really seen our portfolio community that has thousands of employees across all these companies pull together to really help each other out. I mean, just today we had somebody hiring like a back-end engineer, and I knew another couple companies were hiring a back-end engineer and was pinging them to help share candidates. So to Vicky's point, to Samantha's point, like there are all of these little nodes of people helping each other in this crazy world that we're living in that is really giving me a lot of hope.
Likewise, it is. It's evident everywhere we look where this experience has illuminated this element of helping each other rise up, and let's go with that. Speaking, I love how the panel has been curated. Samantha and Vicky coming from that internal HR perspective, and Lindsay coming from a more holistic, multi-company operational perspective. I want to key on Samantha and Vicky first. You guys both your companies are hiring still, and here you're hiring in the midst of a massive candidate pool. The candidate pool is grown by the millions every day, and this is a source of great pain for people. And I'm curious what that means for you folks. What I'd like to get out of that is help the audience understand the impacts that has on an organization such as yours, and then flip side from the employee perspective or the candidate perspective, what can candidates be doing to illuminate or amplify their candidacy better in the face of so many candidates hitting the market? Vicky, can I start with you?
Yeah.
Great.
I think what I would really recommend to people is use the power of your connections, right? We're getting inundated with applicants every day. But if Lindsay or Samantha give me a referral, I'm going to take the time out of my day to make sure I talk to that person. Look at your LinkedIn connections. It's amazing how many people are connected to people. So I would say if there was one piece of advice is leverage your connections and your network to help introduce you, because that will go a long way. We get great referrals from Lindsay, and I share people with her all the time. And I'm sure Samantha and we just met, but we'll be doing it too. And so never forget about those network connections, because they will help you get at least that phone conversation.
Good, super. Samantha, what do you have to add to that? What are you experiencing with all the folks on the market? How can you help people?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest tips that I can recommend for candidates who are looking right now is to really make yourself stand out, to use whatever things are at your fingertips as possible. As a recruiter, we look through literally hundreds of resumes. And one of the best pro tips I can give anybody is really invest in that. Go on Etsy.com, spend $10 or $15, and there are amazing templates that are created by graphic designers that you just plug in player information. I love when I'm sourcing and I'm looking through I'm screening, I'm looking through resumes, and I get something that has a pop of color, has, you know, some imagery, some iconography that really stands out and, you know, can really, really separate that person and grab my attention. And the content is maybe not any different. It's just how that content is presented really helps you stand apart. I would say outside of that, I think now it's really important for us to find areas where we can control things, because we have a loss of control right now. And some tips that I would give you is, you know, try to bucket your day. Like I tell my employees, spend 80% of your day and your week on like the direct things of your tasks, but spend 20% of your time developing yourself. Now is the time to take advantage of different resources that are even discounted online. There are tons of courses that are at a marginal cost that they usually are. So invest in yourself right now. And that is something that you can really control and sets you apart from the pack and sets you up for success down the road. So if you're a salesperson who was laid off during this time, but you've been thinking about a transition into software sales, for example, take advantage of resources online and connect with people who can really help you make that step when the time is right.
That's awesome. I have a term that I like to use. I call it instamacy. And what that is instant intimacy. And I think that when you are in this kind of position, it's important to be very quickly about to be vulnerable about where you're at, get past the sort of bean dip talk, and respect that because this human condition is so elevated, and utilizing your power of connections, get to what you need and how you can help someone instantly. Instant intimacy. And I agree that, Samantha, investing in yourself as well as investing in your relationships is really, really important. Lindsay, you come from this holistic viewpoint where you have insight into the operational strategy of a lot of different companies. And what are you observing with how they're managing their existing workforce? For those that are maybe, even for some that might need to let people go, how can our audience understand what companies are going through trying to manage that, as much as help to understand what your companies are just seeing overall? What kind of perspective do you have?
Yeah. So I guess we'll touch on existing workforce first. Actually, this is something Samantha and I are working on together within the Chicago Ventures portfolio. I think a lot of us in the tech and startup world are very much equipped to work from home already. I mean, the logistics and tactics of it are fairly easy. I think it's the emotional burden that is the more difficult thing to manage right now, where people have family and kids and, are caring for elderly parents, or, different schedules they need to juggle at home. And I think there is, I think it can be difficult for many people, and we often don't realize what's going on at, people's homes behind the scenes, because it's not something you talk about all the time. So I think there is a certain level of empathy that needs to be happening and is happening across our portfolio companies and a lot of startups as we're adjusting to this environment where the schedule might be different than it is in the office. So I think like managing stress, managing anxiety, just as Samantha was referring to, being able to bucket your day appropriately is important. And I know, a lot of companies are being very thoughtful around like, how do we keep people engaged? How do we encourage mindfulness, physical and mental health and wellness? Are we doing, like yoga sessions every Tuesday morning? Are we doing all hands calls? Are we doing fun activities with the company just to keep people feeling engaged? And I'm sure if we get to it, Samantha and Vicky could chime in with some ideas. In regards to, I know you mentioned layoffs. I mean, candidly, there have been a lot of layoffs across the board, right? I mean, unemployment is at an insane rate right now, and it's terrifying and sad. Obviously, tech startups have not been immune to that. If anybody has not read yet the letter from Carta's CEO, Henry Ward, who did some big layoffs yesterday, I think if you are an executive that is in the position of having to do layoffs or furlough, that is going to become a gold standard of how you communicate with your team. He was very open and honest and kind of raw and just, shared what was happening. So I think if you are in a position where you have to do layoffs to extend your runway and keep the business afloat, it's certainly something that's going to be happening. As a leader, think about the way to do it that is going to be the most human and be the most empathetic, because it can certainly go the wrong way. And I've heard people say this a lot, and I'm sure we'll hear it more, is people are going to remember how you treat them in a time of crisis, very much so. And so make sure that we're all stressed and dealing with difficult things right now, that you are treating people the right way during these potentially difficult times.
Yeah, I'm familiar with CARTA, and thank you for referencing that. That's a really good experience share. Lindsay, on that same topic, what if someone is in the market and they're really interested in a company who also just announced layoffs? Do you have any thought, like how do companies, assuming that economic flow comes back and they start getting in a position to grow again, what is happening there within the company, and how can people, continue to stay engaged with a company like that, even if they're not hiring now?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I think it probably differs for every company. One thing that I will say is just a sidebar is a lot of careers pages right now are not current, right? So if you're careers pages and looking, they might not be totally up to date. So just keep that in mind if you're on the market. And frankly, there are some companies that have had layoffs that are still hiring because they they had to do layoffs of a certain department, but still need an engineer or still need, a customer success person. So just because there have been massive layoffs does not necessarily mean they're not still hiring. It probably does, but not necessarily. One thing that Vicky and I talk a lot about, and I've learned a lot about from her, is just, making sure that if there's a company you really, really want to work for and are really interested in, do what you can to educate yourself about that business.
Yes.
And make sure that you're keeping up to speed. I mean, given how the talent market is going to or the candidate market, I guess, is just going to explode. I think we're going to see a lot of people in the coming months taking roles that they are extremely overqualified for. That's just going to be the reality. That happened in 2008, 2009, it happened in 2001. So I think that's going to happen again. So you're going to have to do what you can to make yourself stand out, and understanding and being very passionate about the business and showing that, maybe you become a customer, right? If it's a consumer facing business you think you want to work for, do what you can to become a customer and learn as much as you can about how they're operating, provide them feedback, all of that. So that's just a couple of thoughts off the top of my head.
Those are really good thoughts. Speaking of engagement, I want to encourage our audience that if you can find the chat button, you can put some stuff up there in the public chat, and I'll try to get to any questions or thoughts at the end of our presentation. Samantha and Vicky, Lindsay alluded to some of the engagement. I think this is pertinent, like for our employer audience as much as our candidate audience, to understand what you folks are doing with respect to how talent matters and engaging people, and for both retention and keeping them involved and engaged. Speaking yesterday, you guys had some really interesting things going and that you were doing that might inspire some of our audience here.
You want to go first, Samantha?
I'll go ahead if that's all right. Touch
Yeah.
on a couple of the really kind of, I think, fun ones. I'll touch a little bit more on kind of what we're doing from the mental health space, as I think it is just as important as the more fun activities. I feel very fortunate to work in an organization that really takes mental health seriously. We don't even use the term sick days. We use the term health days because you can use sick days for both mental and physical reasons. So it's really about, looking at it from a more inclusive approach. We actually decided this week and announced to our employees yesterday that we're going to take May 1st off and have a company day off so that we can all reset and enter our next fiscal quarter, as best we can, as many people have had to cancel vacations and opportunities for themselves to reset and just kind of start this next fiscal quarter out really, really strong. Additionally to that, we're providing resources that are covered in our insurance packages, giving them information about like teletherapy, things like that. We're also doing a session for like Meditation Monday. So a couple of our employees have offered to do fitness classes as well to keep up that physical health as well. And I think that this is so important right now, and thinking about where our employees are right now and also where they're going to be as we do re-enter back into our physical workspaces. We're thinking about kind of a workplace re-entry plan so that our employees can come back to work in a phase in, so that they only maybe work a couple of days in the office. We also do a weekly catered lunch on Wednesdays. So we're thinking about how we can safely serve that food because we certainly don't want any kind of PTSD to occur when we're eating food in the office and having those experiences like shaking hands and things like that. There's going to be a lot of societal impact, and it's really also going to impact our workplaces as well.
Yeah, Vicky, anything to add?
Yeah, well, one of the things that Samantha didn't share that I actually am working on stealing from her that she shared yesterday was that they have a lot of parents, a lot of people have kids, and keeping your kids entertained while you work or your pets is not always easy. And she said that they had people that were starting to read stories to occupy your children during certain times. So we have some standing, reoccurring meetings. So we're trying to set up some things that I literally set this up after we talked last night. So I'm excited to start trying that. And today, two things that we've done that I think have been really great is we've been doing bi-weekly town hall meetings with our CEO. It allows people to ask questions. They can ask them with their name shared or anonymously. And I think it just allows them to ask things that they might not be able to ask normally, or they're wondering, or it's on their mind. And he's as honest with them as he can. And I think being as transparent as you can with your employees is key during these times, because you don't want to blindside them either, right? So our CEO's been really transparent and really trying to like make sure that we're a step ahead. And then the other thing is, and Samantha mentioned this a little bit, but we had today we hosted a counseling session with our EAP program. So we had a licensed professional come online and do an 2-hour session. The first hour was coping mechanisms and how do you deal with things, and the next hour was like a Q&A type thing. And we had we have 145 employees and we had almost 50 attendees. So it just goes to show you how many people are looking for those, resources and how to help. And then it was nice to remind them that they have a certain number of sessions through their EAP that they can use. And then for those of you who have United, Optum is also offering unlimited sessions for counseling as well.
This is really awesome. And if you're an employer, these are the kinds of things you can be doing. If you're currently employed and want to be more engaged with your employer, you might suggest doing some of these things or be a champion for one of these things within the organization, particularly if you find yourself with additional time on your hands. And if you're a candidate, I think it's really important to know that these are the kinds of things that are going on. Perhaps if you're a candidate in the market, you could even offer to do some of these things, as a way to get your name out there. Like, how good would that be? We had a good question coming in from our audience. I love that. It was directed to Lindsay, but I'm going to put it out there to everyone. Lindsay, you had mentioned that a lot of overqualified people will be in the market for jobs. I am curious. This particular guest said, any tips for a job seeker who is willing to take that job? In other words, he or she is someone who's probably overqualified for a job, but they'd be very interested in that. This could be really helpful for each of you to answer. Lindsay, you start.
Sure. You know what? My advice to that person would be probably the same advice as it would be to every other candidate, with maybe one tiny caveat. And it's something we've touched on already, but this is a sales process. You're selling yourself. So make sure that if it's a job you really want, sell yourself as best you can. Depending on who you're going through, if you're talking to a VC who's helping to hire, if you're talking to a recruiter who's helping to hire, if you're talking to the people ops or the talent team who's hiring, I'd be interested in Samantha and Vicki's perspective on this too. My guess is that being transparent around the fact that you realize that this is technically a step down or not a parallel move or not an up move for you is okay. I think being upfront about that right away will be helpful. Otherwise, you might be dismissed right away. And sometimes it's probably not always as easy to share, to share right away, unless it's like coming through somebody that you know. But I would imagine being upfront is a good thing to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I think that's really correct. Go ahead, Samantha. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Vicky.
I was just going to say that's very accurate. I would say that if you can at least let somebody know, like that, hey, I might be overqualified for this opportunity, but I'm willing to do that, and then prove myself and hope that there'll be growth opportunities in the future. I think that'll go a long way. But I think the best thing is to Lindsay's point, is just being transparent with the people that you're talking to throughout the process.
You bet. Samantha?
Yeah, I think, we can make those assumptions. And I just want to point out that, like, when a recruiter might make that assumption about, okay, this person's overqualified and pass by them, it's, not out of malice or anything like that. They're looking at, retention for that role. And they don't, they're thinking about, is this person going to be satisfied? Are they going to want to move on at the first opportunity? So it's not that they don't think that person could do the job. They're really just, trying to make a long-standing hire. So I think just looking at that from a recruiting perspective is important to note. But I think, make sure that you sell yourself in the sense of, like, why you want that job, why you want to be at that company, want to take that job. Because I, as a recruiter, might be assuming that if you're applying for my job, you've also applied for 200 other jobs that are identical in the sense to mine. But why do you want this exact one? That's what I really want to know. And how can you really bring value? And I would also say that for people who are potentially applying for jobs outside of, not in the sense of like a level, but like a transition shift, is really make sure that you sell your skills that are transferable. Because I, as a recruiter, might see this job title and then this is the job you're applying for, and might not see that connection, but spell it out for me. Let me know that you have these skills that actually I'm looking for, and making sure that there's a high correlation so that I can properly vet your candidacy.
Really, really good points. I like how you went with that assumption piece. There's a perception element to that too. When someone looks at a resume, I'd like to encourage hiring managers out there to take stock in the fact that a lot of people are promoted into roles that oftentimes aren't actually the best fit for them. You can go from being hands-on to being managerial, when really hands-on is where you really enjoy the fruits of your labor best. And maybe managing people just isn't for you. And so for candidates, that can be an excellent way to position yourself as where the perception of being overqualified might not actually be right. And I want to encourage hiring managers out there to really take this opportunity where you can grow your team with human capital here at like you have an opportunity you've never had before. And so look beyond the overqualified to understand what someone's true passion really is.
Just to add to that, Dave, like I can say personally, from a leadership perspective, there have been moments, I'll be very honest, in the last couple of weeks where I've literally said I kind of want to crawl back into my individual contributor hole, because I have your need to like control things right now, and just like trying to work cross-functionally and remotely is a very new thing, the remote element. So like that's also something that would resonate with me if I was a recruiter. If somebody said, you know what, like I just kind of want to do my thing and I want to focus on where I really add value and do what I do.
Yeah, good. Another question coming in. This is guest number 84. I hate to put a number to you, but we got a lot of people viewing us. The question is here very pointedly, and I'd like for each of you to answer this concisely. What guidance can each of you share when working on that resume? 1 or 2 pages. There's conflicting information out there. What do you suggest? Boom. Samantha.
Sorry. Go ahead, Samantha. You go.
I would say the right number of pages.
Okay. What you feel right about. Vicky, you're burning to say something.
I think less is more. I prefer 1 page. Most recruiters look at the first page more than any other page. So I wouldn't stress yourself out over that, right? I would just make sure that your job titles, what your desires are, what you want to do, and what you've done in your most recent job. And I think the biggest mistake people make is they put very cliche things in their bullets of what they've done. Be real and genuine. Give me specifics. initiatives that you have put in place, data that you've driven. Like, I want to know some facts. It'll generate great conversation. And those are the resumes that I look at much faster than somebody that sends me a long resume with a bunch of bullets. I say the same thing about our managers that want to write 20-page job descriptions. I'm like, people aren't reading them. They get past the first 2 lines and they're moving on. So I'm personally as short is better, but that's, me.
Good. Well said. Good. We started this conversation talking about the human condition and connections and community. And it's so evident everywhere I see, everywhere I look, and it's really inspiring. And I want to just chime in to let the candidates out there, it seems like from the majority of questions and comments we're getting, a large portion of the audience are people that are looking for work. There are a ton of opportunities to raise your hand and participate in what is a widespread movement to help your community through this. In Colorado, Chicago, Austin, wherever you are, there are top-down initiatives that offer you the opportunity to participate in COVID response and economic relief that are dying for volunteer help. And the people that are engaged are people who are influencers in this community, and the opportunity to work with them and have a hand in turning this thing around can be a real springboard towards your next career and your next passion. I just cannot encourage that enough. Like that's what every panelist here has said about investing in yourself or looking into career, educating yourself. That's another way to do it. Don't just spend your time applying to jobs when you have an opportunity to participate in something that can also be really rewarding, because it sure is good for your mental health. We had another
just saying, like, also do a mind map of your skill set and identify potentially where you might have gaps. If I, as a recruiter, were to review your resume, where are the things that I might have question marks on, and seek out those volunteer opportunities to fill in those gaps. That is really going to resonate with me as a recruiter, that you utilize this time to develop yourself and also give back to the community. Like, no better, attraction for me when I would look at a resume.
And I think someone put that on there as a question is do you want to know those extra things? Absolutely. Yes. I think Samantha would say the same thing. Like, I want to know what you do outside of work. I want to know how you give back. I want to know what gets you excited and what motivates you.
Please.
Go ahead, sorry. I was going to
that info is on LinkedIn as well. Like, if I were to, look at your profile on LinkedIn, like, show me what you're doing. Like, whenever I hired a couple recruiters in my team, I had them do a case study where they showed me why they selected certain candidates on LinkedIn versus others. And both of them picked out information that actually wasn't about their corporate jobs. It was like, this person volunteers for this organization. I can see correlations between that volunteer opportunity and what we do it as an organization. And that was like, yes, that is what I'm wanting to see. Like, bring it.
Yep.
That's a great point. With your LinkedIn profiles, all of us have the benefit in a paradoxical way of having more time right now. And in that, we're also generated by this fuel to help people. This is a really good time to ask that former manager for a written referral on your LinkedIn recommendations or something like that. I know I feel so compelled to help people without regard to any kind of fee or whatever, just to do whatever I can. And I know I'm speaking for millions of other people who have that opportunity to do that. It's just a really good time to build your profile. Do any of you have a feeling about like cover letters along with a resume submittal? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Too much, too busy? Thumbs up?
I can give you my take as the VC in the room. One thing I'll add is I rarely look at resumes. I'm also not the one actually doing the hiring. I live in LinkedIn. So depending who you're talking to, I mean, it just makes sense to have your LinkedIn updated, in my opinion. I think like it's potentially a more dynamic source of information. I'm like particularly surprised when I'm talking to like a marketing or a brand person that doesn't have their LinkedIn looking great. So I would just suggest to get that updated. Cover letter, I mean, They can go really great or they can go really poorly. Anytime that I'm talking to a candidate that I'm going to send to Samantha or Vicky, I say, send me like 3 to 5 sentences on why you're a good fit for the role and why you're interested in this company. I don't want a formal like form cover letter. If you want to do that, fine. But just like put something that I can send along to them so they have more context and more color on you, because you're not going to get that from your LinkedIn and you're not going to get that from your resume. I mean, if you're just reviewing bulk applications and you have hundreds of cover letters, are you going to read them all? Probably not. No, you're going to be screening for skills first. I think it's like if you're coming through a warm introduction, having some context, or if you're at like a, maybe another tier in the process, that might make more sense.
I think the warm introductions are so key. I know we said it earlier, but if there's a company you want to work at, or if there's a company that you are in the process with, find somebody who's connected. And one other idea would be, let's say you interview with myself or Samantha and we don't have a role at the moment that fits your needs. Obviously you can tell, like, we're all connected. All the people talk to each other. And so don't be afraid to ask us if we know a company that's hiring that we could recommend you to. Because I'm always trying to help people out. Like if someone comes to me and I don't have a role, you better be I interviewed this great person. Do you have an opportunity for them? So don't be afraid to ask that either. But I'll piggyback on Lindsay. You got to have those that LinkedIn up to date.
I'd like to see what you folks think of this. I have been advising people that if they are interested, that they might consider setting up their own LLC or S Corp. I see the great potential for companies to potentially contract when coming out of layoffs as a means to grow before they start jumping back into adding headcount. Having that flexible labor or something like that. To me, it's a $50 exercise to go on the Secretary of State's website and get an EIN number. Do you see that as something that someone might do, or that could be a way to help maybe to do some part-time work as a way to get in with a company? Do you see companies doing that? Would you guys look at something like that?
Yeah, we have 5 people that we're working with right now that will have potential to go full-time if it works out. If you can't form as an LLC, and Samantha, you could probably touch on this too, but I think it's important to know that there are staffing agencies that will payroll people for you. Yes. So that's another option. There is a markup because they're accruing costs, but it's another way. And I would say don't forget about the staffing agencies out there as well, because they can be a huge resource.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really great point. I couldn't agree with you more. I think, it really depends on the industry and the skill set. Like if you're in a more creative field, like marketing, product management, for example, those fields are definitely going to see an increase in contract work. It's only natural. I think you'll see that less in maybe some more like the sales side of the house. So I think it really depends on the industry, but that's certainly something you should consider. And again, like finding that control for yourself to feel like, I'm doing something, I think is a powerful thing.
That's a really good point. Lindsay, could you see that in your portfolio of companies where it might be easier to work with someone if they're sort of weighing whether or not to bring on headcount, if maybe you could contract them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a blanket statement whether that works or doesn't work, because it just depends on the company. So I'm glad to hear that both Clearcover and LogicGate are interested in that model. Some companies are like, we need somebody full-time in-house. We're trying to build product and get all of this stuff done yesterday, so we just need somebody full-time all the time. We need somebody to be like full part of the team. So it just depends, but certainly is that an option, and are startups open to contracting people out? Yeah, absolutely.
Good. And I like your point, Samantha, like it's doing something, right? Whether or not you actually employ the LLC or S Corp is one thing, but at least you put yourself in a position where if you needed to, you could. And if you start pursuing actual engagements in that respect, it can be a nice tax vehicle to actually do some write-offs because you're trying to promote the business. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to summarize some of the things that I've learned today here, and then we'll kind of close up here. We started off talking about the human condition, the real power of connections. I mentioned that element of intimacy, that instant level of connection through understanding what a company is all about. Really important to beef up that resume. We touched on that a ton. Etsy provides a great number of resources for you to see templates, to get that element of look and feel. Most folks here feel that like a shorter resume is good, but we also said the right resume. Whatever you feel most comfortable in presenting yourself. Most discerning hiring managers know that a resume is a piece of paper and the person behind it is who ultimately they're interested in. So what reflects and presents you best? Investing in yourself is so key. So whatever that means to you, whether it's in further education, or we also talked about investing in relationships and investing in your community. Super, super paramount right now, and a fantastic way to catalyze your role in the community and hopefully lead to new relationships. Check out the letter from the Carta CEO about layoffs. I think that as Lindsay said, is really the gold standard for how you handle a situation like that, which we all know for all employers or owners is one of the most difficult decisions they've ever had to make. And so handling that with sensitivity and compassion is how this market does it best. A health day, not just a sick day. We're giving people health day. And what you're seeing is that we're finding whole new ways to engage and to discover what each of us is made of and what we're all about, going way beyond the title that we were hired for and understanding what we're made of and what our constitution is built around. And that's really important. Also, can't hurt to potentially set up an LLC or an S Corp. Might be a good way to get an in with a company or to further your search. So taking a quick round robin on that summary, Samantha, Lindsay, and Vicky, perhaps in that order. Maybe there's one thing that you can share with us that you took away today.
Take care of yourself enables you to take care of others. So really be aware of your needs and focus on what you can do to better yourself and drive yourself forward. And that will enable you to bring great things to fruition for yourself and for your community.
Super.
So I have a thought that actually is kind of two conflicting thoughts. I'll share them both. So one is the one side is it's an incredibly emotionally taxing time where you hear us talking, you see Twitter, people are like, use this time to learn Japanese and cook fancy meals every night. And it feels exhausting to have to do all of that. And we're telling you to work on yourself, and you should, if you have the time and the bandwidth and headspace. So with the recognition that is very difficult, some of the, again, VC hat on, some of the best, most successful companies are built in economic downturns. So if there is something you've had an itch or a desire to do, and you do feel you have some extra time and energy, now is the time to work on it. Commit that headspace to doing the thing that you've always wanted to do.
Awesome. Very well said. Vicky?
Lindsay, that was actually such a great point, because there's so many ideas. Yeah. Did I unfreeze yet? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Hey, you're warm. You're like the heat miser.
Thing I learned is no idea is crazy, right? And I think whether it's trying to get in connection with the hiring manager or the head of HR, or just an idea to help your employer get through this time. I think we've heard some ideas today that, like I said, I talked to Samantha yesterday and I'm already stealing an idea. And I think that these are the times that we should share those things. And the last thing I would say, and I know we said it a lot, but build relationships now. Somebody might not be hiring today, but start building that relationship. So when they are hiring, they think of you. You're top of mind. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Set up regular times to circle back with them. Those are the things that go the extra mile when they do flip the switch to start hiring again.
That's awesome. Thank you. Well, I want to say that this experience has really brought the best out of me. And I would like to leave all of you with that thought, not just our panelists, but our audience. This is a tremendous time to bring the best out of others. And I feel like when you are helping and trying to bring the best out of others, the best is brought out of you. So best of luck, everyone out there. These are trying times, but as they say, this too shall pass. So thank you to Michael and all the groups here to put this together. and seize the day as much as you can every day. That's what I say.